In the United States, demonstrators are rallying against President Donald Trump's anti-immigrant measures in front of the Lloyd George courthouse in Las Vegas. The president of Venezuela, Nicolás Maduro, together with the high command, led the military march as part of the state of the first popular military and police exercises, Bolivarian Shield 2025. And in Palestine, Israeli occupation forces continue with their large-scale operations in the West Bank, one day after having killed 10 people and injuring over 40. Hello and welcome to From the South. My name is Belén de los Santos. I'm from the teleSUR studios in Caracas, Venezuela. We begin with the news. In the United States, demonstrators are rallying against President Donald Trump's anti-immigrant measures in front of the Lloyd George courthouse in Las Vegas. A day after his sworn-in ceremony, Trump abrogated a century-old policy known as birthright citizenship that guaranteed citizenship to the children of immigrants born in the U.S., regardless of the status of their parents. In addition, the Republican president eliminated all protection for irregular migrants taking refuge in churches, shelters, schools, and other places in order to expand anti-immigrant law enforcement to arrest and deport them back to their countries of origin. And we stay in the United States as the new Trump administration also eliminated all protection for migrants taking refuge in churches, shelters, schools, and other places to expand anti-immigrant law enforcement in order to arrest and deport them to their countries of origin. The acting Secretary of the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, Benjamin Huffman, announced in a statement the end of Joe Biden's policies and criticized the previous administration for abusing the so-called humanitarian parole program that encouraged 1.5 million migrants to enter the country. In another statement, the DHS also informed about the reinstatement and resumption of the 2019 border protection policy, which allows officials in charge to return migrants to neighboring countries while deportation procedures are completed. And we go now to Nicaragua as the Ministry of Health confirmed in a statement the death on Tuesday night of the former president of El Salvador, Carlos Mauricio Funes Cartagena, as a result of his serious chronic illness. Mauricio Funes became president of El Salvador on the hand of the Farabundo Martí National Liberation Front with 51.32% of the valid votes and governed along with his vice president, Salvador Sánchez Serén, from 2009 to 2014. Funes was living in Nicaragua since 2016 after being persecuted by Salvadoran authorities who accused him of embezzlement, illicit enrichment, and bribery. And now in other news, the Argentine human rights organization Abuelas de Plaza de Mayo announced on Tuesday that it had found the granddaughter number 139 kidnapped during the 1976 civic military dictatorship. The found girl is the daughter of Noemí Beatriz Macedo and Daniel Alfredo Inama, both disappeared. The recovered granddaughter was born between January and February of 1978, and as is customary in these cases, her name was kept secret. The fathers of the found granddaughter were kidnapped in November 1977, when Macedo was 6 or 7 months pregnant. Both were members of the Marxist-Leninist Communist Party of Argentina and were seen by survivors in the clandestine detention and extermination center Club El Atlético in Buenos Aires. Abuelas de Plaza de Mayo has been working for years to restore the identity of at least 500 children who were stolen from their families by the last civic military dictatorship in the country.
Abuelas de Plaza de Mayo announces with great happiness the restitution of another granddaughter kidnapped during the last civil-military dictatorship. Today, we welcome the daughter of Noemí Beatriz Macedo and Daniel Alfredo Ina.
And the Cuban Foreign Ministry denounced the continuous U.S. attacks on the Cuban people in view of Trump's decision to reincorporate the Caribbean island on the U.S. state sponsors of terrorism list. In this sense, the ministry expressed that U.S. President Donald Trump has been attacking Cuba from day one and without any pretext. It also pointed out that the decision to reestablish measures against the island that were revoked by former U.S. President Joe Biden is a demonstration of the aggressiveness of U.S. imperialism against the sovereignty, peace, and well-being of the Cuban population. Moreover, the institution stated that the inclusion of Cuba once again on the arbitrary list of states that allegedly sponsor terrorism is evidence of an absolute disregard for the truth.
They play with it like it's something. They promise to take it out. They promise to put it in. They play with the parties, with the lobbies, depending on how the Cuban lobby or the anti-Cuban lobby is doing in the United States. They play with that to see what can they win, to see how many votes they can get. Biden did it on his way out. Trump did it on his way in. Let's see what Trump does when he gets out again. Whether in the end he puts US in, or takes US out, or leaves US. As long as that continues to depend on a presidential signature, as long as that continues to be something that a president can declare and that can be done that way, not in the same week but in the months that follow, that's going to continue to be a regrettable thing, and it would be very good if we weren't on that list.
It is not even a commitment, but rather an act of mercy for them, at the end of their administration, to remove US from that list. But it is already evident that this is some kind of diversion or something that makes no sense to them, and they have included US again, as well as they have so often intensified the repression and all the economic measures so that the Cuban people cannot prosper.
And we now move on to other topics. The National Secretary of Risk Management of Ecuador reported the overflowing of the Las Juntas and Agua Viva rivers in the provinces of Los Rios and Loja due to heavy rains. The authorities reported that the overflowing of the rivers affected 2 vehicles and a family in the sector of San Pedro and Vilcabamba, and in floods in the province of Loja. On the other hand, also indicated that the overflows are due to heavy rainfall due to the winter season and that no human losses have been reported. The entity warned of the risk of flooding in other rivers that tend to increase their water levels in the provinces of Morona, Santiago, Los Rios, and Guayas. And in Brazil, heavy rains in the state of Rio Grande do Sul caused the death of 5 people. The municipality of Santa Vitória do Palmar was affected by floods after recording 400 millimeters of rain in a few hours, equivalent to 1/3 of the average for the whole year. The phenomenon affected some houses that lost their roofs and others that were affected by the heavy flooding, while soybean and rice crops were completely submerged under the water. Rescue teams are working to enter isolated areas in order to obtain a more complete assessment of the impact. And now we have a short break coming up, but first, remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. We continue with the information. The president of Venezuela, Nicolás Maduro, together with the High Command, led the military march as part of the start of the first popular military and police exercise named Escudo Bolivariano 2025. The president of Venezuela announced that this Wednesday the Integral Defense Management Body will be operating in all of the country's states, municipalities, parishes, and communities. The head of state said that Venezuela had a great success in fighting and defeating criminal groups and is also offering other nations the experience gained by the international security units during their operations. Maduro announced that they will be deployed this Wednesday, January 22nd and Thursday, January 23rd, together with all the people on the occasion of the 10th anniversary of the 2015 Bolivarian Shield Exercises. And displaced Colombians fleeing the armed conflict in the Catatumbo region were transferred from Casigua, El Cubo to Santa Bárbara del Zulia. According to Venezuelan authorities, the displaced have been attended to in terms of security and health, and the military deployment has been key to guaranteeing access to shelters set up in an organized manner. The armed confrontations in the border region have forced hundreds of people to abandon their homes. In view of this fact, the Venezuelan government, in solidarity with the Colombian people, set up checkpoints under the supervision of the Bolivarian National Guard for the immediate attention of the Colombian families affected during this situation. And also, the government of Venezuela declared on Tuesday the former president of Colombia, Álvaro Uribe, and Iván Duque as public enemies of the country, terrorists, and persona non grata. The action taken during an ordinary session of the Venezuelan National Assembly comes in response to recent statements made by Uribe, who is linked to paramilitary groups and drug traffickers. The former Colombian head of state requested a foreign military intervention in Venezuelan territory with the purpose of encouraging conflict in the country. In this context, Iván Duque was also regarded as public enemy of the nation for his terrorist acts against the Venezuelan people. Both former presidents were considered paramilitary terrorists responsible for numerous assassinations.
Considering the honorable deputies who agree with the project presented and the modification carried out during the debate, raise your hand. It has been approved unanimously, the agreement that declares as public enemy of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela the paramilitaries, terrorists, drug traffickers, fascists, criminals, representatives of the international extreme right wing, Álvaro Uribe Vélez.
And also the president of Venezuela's National Assembly, Jorge Rodriguez, referred to the actions of the extreme right wing. Let's listen.
He encouraged all of the actions of the extreme right wing of Venezuela that are his daughters and sons, and their mercenaries, Juan Guaidó, Machado, Leopoldo López. They are all mercenaries of Álvaro Uribe Vélez.
And meanwhile, the president of Venezuela, Nicolás Maduro, during the meeting with the Economic Council, assured that Venezuela will continue with great productive and economic advances, which are focused on cooperative projects with the ALBA TCP.
The industrial sector has made progress, and it's optimistic in extending its productive activities. We still have to recover the whole sector of over 250 industries that are at the hands of the state, and all of them need to be productive 100% without any excuse. Let's change anything that has to be changed, and we won't allow a single lie more. In an alliance with the working class, new investments, new schemes of investment. Let's produce with all the industries that are at the hands of the state.
And now we have a second short break coming up, but before we invite you to visit our YouTube channel at teleSUR English. There you will be able to rewatch our interviews, top stories, special broadcastings, and more. Hit the subscribe button and activate the notification bell to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. Final short break, don't go away. Welcome back from the south. We continue now with Palestine as the Israeli occupation forces continue with their large-scale operations in the West Bank, one day after having killed 10 people and injuring over 40. For the second consecutive day, Zionist troops have mounted Wednesday an offensive against Jenin and its refugee camp. Wafa news agency reported that on early morning, bulldozers began to demolish the street and the entrance of the government hospital in Jenin, which was surrounded by the military. Furthermore, as part of the siege, the occupying army arrested 18 citizens in the West Bank. According to the governor of Jenin, Kamal Abu al-Rub, Israel took advantage of the truce in Gaza to transfer its forces to the occupied West Bank and harass its population. And a senior official of the Iraqi resistance urged U.S. forces to withdraw from the region. Otherwise, they would order the initiation of attacks against several U.S. military bases located in Iraq. The announcement was made by the Secretary General of the Hezbollah movement, al-Nuyaba al-Sheikh Akram al-Kabi, who took the opportunity to thank Iran, Lebanon, and Yemen for the support of the retaliatory attacks against the U.S. Army. The official expressed that Iraq would continue to support the Palestinian people, assuring that there is no room for weakness, withdrawal, or fear. And we continue with other topics. U.S. President Donald Trump set up sanctions against Russia if President Vladimir Putin refused to negotiate with him on a ceasefire with Ukraine. During a press conference at the White House, the U.S. president declared that his contact with his Russian counterpart would take place very soon and stressed the need to put an end to the Russian-Ukrainian conflict. On the other hand, Trump warned that it seems likely that he would impose additional sanctions on Russia if Putin refused to enter into negotiations with him. Moreover, the U.S. head of state did not give clear answers to reporters when asked whether his new administration would continue to send arms to Kiev or whether it is considering discontinuing these supplies. We continue now with other topics. In South Korea, detained President Yoon Suk-yeol denied Tuesday that he had ordered troops to forcibly remove lawmakers from the National Assembly after declaring martial law. During his hearing, Yoon Suk-yeol claimed that his actions were not aimed at blocking the assembly, but were a warning to the opposition Liberal Democratic Party for undermining the government's actions. He also denied that he had sent a note to Finance Minister Choi Sang-mok on the day of martial law that it was imposed and asking him to prepare a budget for an emergency legislative body. The National Assembly impeached the detained president and suspended his powers, and the Constitutional Court has until June to decide whether to permanently remove him or reinstate him. And we go now to China as preparations began to celebrate the Lunar New Year, also known as the Spring Festival, the most important holiday in the traditional Chinese calendar, which this year will be celebrated on January 29th. The celebrations of this date, based on the lunisolar calendar traditionally used in China, begin in the first day of the lunar month and end on the 15th, when the Lantern Festival is held, dates when millions of people around the world travel to their places of origin to enjoy the festivities with their families. In the traditional Chinese calendar, each month of the year corresponds to one of the 12 animals of the Chinese horoscope, with a repetitive rotation. 2025 will be the year of the serpent. And like this, we have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also join us on social media. We are on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and also on TikTok. For TeleSUR English, my name is Belén de los Santos. Thank you for watching.